Welcome, everyone. My name is Patrick Baker, and this is another episode of Relevant Conversation. This is our episode number 4, and we're going to be talking about wellness for entrepreneurs and well-being for entrepreneurs. So part of the thing of being an entrepreneur is that unlike being in a regular job where you report for work, you do your thing, and you go home. Maybe you do some stuff at home. But as an entrepreneur, you're wearing all the hats, you're doing all the jobs. When does work begin? When does work end? Where does work happen? Those kinds of questions. How do you keep it all together? So how do you also maintain your well-being and still do business? I'd like to introduce my co-host, Lori Dubois, and let's have a conversation. Go ahead, Lori.
Okay, great. Thanks, Patrick. One of the main questions that we had in framing this whole conversation is sacrificing your well-being just a quote cost of doing business? Because it seems like a lot of times as an entrepreneur, you believe that, or maybe you're fed that message that sacrificing your well-being is just kind of part of it. So hopefully we'll do a little bit of pushing back on that today. And before we get started, I want our panelists to introduce themselves, and I'm just going to kind of call on people as I see their name in the Brady box. Bunch boxes, and so we will then get started after that. So let's start with Jasmyne.
Hi, I'm Jasmyne Kettwick, and I own Relate Family Therapy and Counseling. We serve Colorado's youth ages 2 and up. We do teens, and we also do couples. We do families and individual work. We have several offices that are geared towards the population. So we have a young child playroom, a tween teen space, family rooms, so someone can come in and feel comfortable for them in their work and whatever's going on for their lives. I've worked a long time in therapy, and I've had several different hats before that. I was a professional singer. I've worked in bars. I've served people. I taught voice lessons. So I've had a lot of opportunity to be an entrepreneur and learn what it means.
Awesome. Thank you, Jasmyne. Okay, next, Leanne.
Hi, I'm Leanne Langdon. I am the owner of Prime of Life Fitness. I'm a certified personal trainer and certified senior fitness specialist. So I work with people at midlife and beyond, really focused on helping people learn the fitness habits that will let them age vibrantly and independently. So I work with people in their own homes or via Zoom, and I've been doing that since 2011.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, next is Jess.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jess Bonasso, and I have a company called Brave Life Consulting. I'm a Brave Life catalyst and a self-rescue coach, author, and speaker, and I work with worn out working Wonder Women who are basically sacrificing their soul, sanity, and health because they're working too hard, right? They're like what we're kind of the topic of what we're talking about. Like, they haven't figured out how to make that work, and I can teach them how to live, love, lead, and work in a smarter way, a softer way that doesn't lead to that sacrifice and self-burnout.
Awesome. Thank you. And now Ed.
I'm Ed Bostick. I have an office here in Centennial, Colorado, and I also see clients over Zoom. And I work with clients who have needs all the way from relationship to workplace issues. And that can be in coaching, and that can also be in therapy. And the therapeutic methods that I use are, I think, a combination of what the client presents to me, their needs in the moment. And so I work somatically. I work with various approaches such as polyvagal theory and safe and sound protocols and heart math, heart rate variability, and all those kinds of brand names, but I also customize those for my clients. I've been doing this since 2002 in various formations, and I see this as really my calling, my purpose. When I see a client light up and just realize the kind of abilities that they have, it really does fill my heart. And that's kind of why I'm in this.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ed. And thank you all of you for being here. We're looking forward to this conversation. I will quickly introduce myself and then turn it over to Patrick, where he'll introduce himself and get started. So my name is Lori Dubois. I own a company called Marketing Troubadour. A troubadour is a storyteller, and I help small business owners formulate their story, AKA build a brand, and then tell that story to the world, AKA that's what marketing is. So helping people with content particularly and email marketing. So Patrick.
Thank you, Lori. I appreciate it. And thank you to our guests for your introductions and for being here today. Again, I'm Patrick Baker, and my business is Prime of Life Tech, and I provide IT tech support and training for older adults and caregivers. I work with folks in the community as well as individuals in community settings. I provide classes, technology office hours, and basically my clients either want to know more about their technology or they have a problem they need solved. So anyhow, I'm really excited to have this conversation today. This is a conversation that hits close to home because as an entrepreneur, as I mentioned at the beginning, we wear all the hats. You are the marketing person, you are the salesperson, you are the service delivery person, you're the customer support person. In one form or another, we do all of those things in our businesses, just as the business person. And then there's the actual, work that we do. And so I know that for myself, I don't always prioritize my mental and physical well-being when I got a lot of stuff to do, when there's a lot going on, or when there's just too much going on in my head, business-wise. So first thing that I think that we wanted to dive into is, and we're gonna dive deep right off the bat. I want to talk about the mind-body connection. Okay, so we want to talk about what is it, why is it important, how do you even recognize it? And anyone, please chime in.
I'll bite.
Okay.
So I see this with my clients all the time. It manifests to me as a client is having pain, chronic pain, from something that happens in their body as they're aging. And that translates to lower energy, feelings of grouchiness, feelings of sadness, feeling depressed, anxious, or vice versa. When I meet with a client who is having family difficulties, issues with a family member, and that sort of emotional friction, it shows up as aches and pains in their bodies, or not feeling enough energy for their normal workout, or whatever. But there's an intimate connection between people's emotional lives and their physical lives.
I would say 100% yes. I'm in a full agreement. I'll jump in and say, like, a big part of the reason why I went through burnout in my 20s while I was climbing the corporate ladder was because I was working full time. I was going to school mostly full time throughout both of that for my undergrad and my graduate. So I was stretched super thin. And it was a mindset that was causing me to do that. It was my limiting beliefs from childhood that said, it formed a story that I had to be, in order to be successful, I had to make money and I had to work really hard. And that mindset is what caused me to overwork, overgive my time, overachieve to the point of burnout, which is what happened in my early 30s. And that burnout, I mean, originally it started as like stress, overwhelm, and exhaustion in my mid 20s. And I kept ignoring it and setting it aside and saying, I just got to keep working. I got to keep working. I don't have time to think about any of this. And so I kept pushing through. And ultimately it took me out physically. I ended up having degradation in my low back to the point of, I've got degeneration in my spine now because of all of that. And the fact that I wasn't taking care of myself and I wasn't doing any mind-body practices. So my physical health started suffering. And I also was dealing with anger management issues as a result of that, anxiety. And I even struggled with depression throughout a lot of my late 20s. And I had no idea that there was a mind-body connection. If you were to tell me that my mindset was leading me into all this, I would have been like, I don't know what you're talking about, right? But now I know that that's absolutely true. And a big part of what I teach my clients is using your body as a barometer for your soul and really learning how to trust what your body is telling you. And if you've got aches and pains, if you're degrading to the point of physical pain and suffering in your body, or you're dealing with chronic emotional issues, that means there's some things you've probably been ignoring and not dealing with that need to be addressed sooner rather than later, or they're going to lead to potentially physical and emotional dis-ease in the body. I mean, I've seen adrenal dysfunction, even cancer, and all of those things happen as a result of us ignoring our body's warning signs. So I think there absolutely is a mind-body connection. 100% yes.
Ed or Jasmine, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. I was just thinking about how the question was framed about well-being, and how then the connections start with, the sensations that we have in our body. Do we feel safe, or do we feel unsafe? And really those kind of polarities and everything in between are really kind of how we live our lives, whether we're in the workplace, whether we're talking with our various relations, or wherever else. And so how then do we change from well-being, which I think is an interesting idea, to being well? How do we be well? Well, we actually honor ourselves, and we work with the various kinds of approaches that can help us do that. And so we know that when we sense something in our body, we sense that before our brain even recognizes that. And we're already responding to something that we have interpreted through our own histories in our bodies before our brain even gets there. And a lot of times our brain can lead the conversation. Woe is me, oh, I got to get this done, I'm buried in this, and so on and so forth. And we can actually talk ourselves into feeling unsafe, not well. And so to be able to have various approaches to those issues, which we all face on a regular kind of basis, that's really easy to use, that comes in handy in the moment, and sometimes can be just totally inconspicuous as well. To be able to have those at our disposal, I think can really get us through a tough day, or a tough meeting, or a tough encounter, or just a tough conversation when we're having with ourselves.
Well, I think one of the things that, everybody is talking about, something that has come to light in such a serious way more recently, right? People are talking about the mind-body connection more than ever, and really putting into play this idea that the way we live our lives is affecting how our internal workings are going on. But some of the things that come up for me, and especially as you look at all the different types of people out there, is that we all have this internal barometer that he was talking about, that it's set a little differently. And, entrepreneurs tend to be more go-getters. There are people that tend to run a little higher, could maybe have a little higher output, maybe have behaviorally just more energy toward their day. And this ability comes, and entrepreneurs end up being those people, historically, that do that and run that marathon in that way, and multitask, and maybe don't get as tired. And I think then it kind of becomes this badge of honor in a way too, is that I can do all these things. And I think that in some ways that's a good thing, because it's showing that, you have that as a core strength, but then it also can lose that balance and can have some detriment to you. But where does that balance go? And what it lends itself to is numbing. We all have the balance, and then once we get off balance, we find our own ways to numb. And we know from the mind-body connection piece that numbing comes in so many different ways, and we overlook it initially. We look at it as like, this is just what I do to feel better, and as Ed was saying, safe. But we think we need it, we think we crave it, we think we want it, and it doesn't have to be the obvious ones. It's not always alcohol, or drugs. It's some other things that kind of come up, and numbing has become such a huge part of our culture, and it's an acceptable part it's wine 30 or whatever type of things that, I wake up, have coffee, go to bed with wine, right? So, that's all part of this idea that numbing is now acceptable because the mind-body connection isn't in sync.
That almost looked like Patrick was having a drink of wine. Just saying.
It's only 3:30.
It's not wine 30 yet.
Not yet.
It's
So-
always water 30.
Water 30, that's exactly true. But do you guys think that maybe half the battle or part of the battle is having people be educated enough to even realize that that's going on within them? Because I think a lot of times, like we say, we ignore it or we numb. I think a lot of people probably don't even realize they're doing it. So, at what point, at some points it becomes unavoidable that there's something really wrong, but are there things that we can do in the interim so that we don't get to that crisis point?
Mhm.
Coping mechanisms, plans. And I think too, another thing to throw out here is if we're looking at the mind-body connection, we're putting everything together, but still there's practices, right, that we can do that are more physical or more mental or more emotional. So what are some of the things either that you teach your clients or that you would have advice for people that are good, maybe in one particular area that have good spillover effects?
Well, I think one of the things that I do with my clients here in the office, sometimes it differs when we're remote, but in the office, I teach them a very simple technique by putting their dominant hand over their heart, just going to stillness, and most everybody practices stillness, so they know how to do that, and just ask with reverence, my heart, tell me what you want me to know, and just listen, and just feel that in your body. And understand those sensations that are happening as that message is conveyed to you. Very simple, very elegant, very quick, but I think it can help people reset in the moment. And you can do that in the grocery store. And obviously there are these kinds of techniques as well that we all know. And most everybody practices, even if they're not even acquainted with these approaches. We just do this naturally. And obviously I'm calming myself down by doing this, but I'm also kind of setting a boundary for myself. Again, so if I could be the fourth person in the line at the grocery store driving myself nuts, why can't these people hurry up and everything? I could just kind of settle down by doing it.
Well, and Ed, to your point about, and everyone knows how to be still, I would raise my hand and say, I don't. I do know the things I should be doing to do it. Sure. I will admit that I struggle, being still and being quiet, I struggle with. And when I think about well-being, I'm thinking about, man, I got to hit the gym, and man, I got to hit the gym hard.
And again, I think I kind of framed my approach as being well rather than well-being.
Right.
Well-being is kind of a status, but being well is a kind of a feeling that we have within us about it's a good world. We're safe here. We belong here. And I know that I'm going to be able to, whatever this moment is presenting itself, I'm being well, regardless of it. I know that sounds like just a tricky kind of a word thing, but it really does go to the heart of the matter in so many ways.
Well, and I think that one of the reasons why this can be challenging for a therapist is because, although I'm a therapist and I own a business, not everybody needs therapy, right? Some people just really need to be able to be present with where they are at any time. Being able to ground, being able to center. And that's one of the ways that we can know that people do need therapy or they are in a place where they need more is because they can't feel their body. They can't feel present. They can't come into their head at this moment. There's worry about the past or the future and this perseveration on something. And so being able to stay present and be relaxed and content in that, no matter how you gain that skill, you know, a therapist can ultimately help you come up with a way that's going to work for you. But that really is what we want to base some of that on is, are you able to be in the present moment and be present to it?
Yeah, I find that a problem for many people.
Mhm.
When I work with a client, the first question I start literally every session with is, how do you feel? And it's just a big open-ended question. And some days people will say, oh, my shoulder hurts. Oh, I didn't get a good enough night's sleep. Or maybe they'll say, I am so mad at my husband, or I'm so stressed about my brother who's dying of cancer. All of those feelings, physical and emotional, tie in to how they're going to be able to exercise that day, to how they're going to be able to be present in that moment. And my job is to tailor their workout to how they feel, but also to help them feel, not just what I feel emotionally, but what do I feel physically? We do an exercise and I'll say, okay, where did you feel that? Could you feel a contraction? Could you feel a stretch? Could you feel pain? Just for many people, it's actually really hard to just identify what's the physical feeling I have? What's the vocabulary I have for describing what's going on in my body and my brain and my heart? And all of it ties together for that sense of being well.
So why aren't we taught that? Because I can understand this thing of being in my head and being in my body. And I know for me, I'm in my head way too much. But how can we have either, I don't know, touch points or some way that you can explore what does being in your body even mean? How do you know if you're not working with someone like, say, one of you four, you know, how can somebody kind of self-administer those questions?
I'll just pop in and say, I think that what you're talking about is there's a lack of education on emotional intelligence, mind-body awareness to begin with. So as a rule of thumb, there's a lot of people out there operating from a place of unconsciousness. And this is where the bad habits, the behaviors, and all of those things come from. So I you know, to ask what can we do to turn that around goes much deeper than what are the tools that we can do to calm and soothe ourselves in the moment. It actually has a lot more to do, at least in my experience in the work I do with my clients. I mean, I'm helping them address the symptoms and come up with practical strategies and solutions that are custom designed for them on how they can calm and soothe their nervous system or tap into their body more effectively, or get to know their body more effectively. But at the end of the day, what's really keeping all of those patterns and behaviors in place is this unconsciousness of why they're doing those things. And so I like to really try to get to the heart, the root of what's going on by going back in time and helping them understand their unique personality patterns that lead them to do the things that they do that lead them into quote unquote burnout or exhaustion or overworking or overwhelm. And so I'm not just focusing on how do we treat the symptoms and educating on that. I'm actually wanting to help them, what's the word I want to use? Become more conscious, more awake, more deliberate in how they're showing up. And so I use the Enneagram personality system with every single one of my clients. And it's a tool that I think is very effective for helping people become aware of where their disintegration lies, what the patterns are of disintegration that they're personally experiencing, the core fears and the core avoidances that are leading them into those experiences. And I find that them understanding that ends up being far more effective than just teaching them how to go practice yoga or do Tai Chi or Pilates so that they can get in their body. Like that, it's both. You have to do both. You have to do the personal growth and development work that's leading them into the unhealthy patterns and behaviors, and give them some insight on where their disintegration lies, and then what their path of integration or health, when we talk about, you know, Ed talking about being well, how do I go from this concept of well-being to being well? It's you've got to do a complete overhaul. You can't just focus on the symptoms. So when you were asking that question earlier, what do we do to turn this around? It's a multifaceted approach. It's not an easy, simple thing where I'm just going to tell you to go practice yoga for the next 2 weeks and get into the habit of that. That might be one of the things we do, but I want you to understand why you're overworking. Why are you overcommitting? Why are you overachieving? Why are you not setting boundaries? Why are you, what are the things that are really driving that, and going in and healing at a cellular level, whatever trauma or imprinting put that habit, pattern, and thought process into place. So it's a hard question to answer without actually sitting down and having a conversation with the person to custom design what their unique self-rescue plan needs to look like. But I love everybody's ideas. I think that when we address the symptoms, yeah, we can, like, I love this, self-soothing technique that Ed was sharing. That's a great tool, but it's not going to fix the problem necessarily. It's just going to help address the issue in that moment and give some comfort in that moment. How do we get to the point where that nervous system though is not getting activated all the time, and you're sitting there doing this 24/7 because you're trying to fix it, right? We got to get to the heart of that. That's how I like to look at it.
Well, and some of this, for me, is coming up as a generational pull. I think that as we look at maybe people who are now in their teens or even early 20s, they have become so accustomed with expressing themselves through social media, means that they're using words, and they're processing content of their thoughts and feelings much more frequently than somebody who maybe had been older and hadn't really had that readily available to them, where they had someone that would listen to their innermost thoughts and feelings 24/7 because it was easy to do. But there is a balance to this, right? Because our teens are mentally more unhealthy in a lot of ways than people had been in generations before. So it also becomes the behavioral output piece. It's not just going into, the processing component where you're saying, like, let's really talk about your feelings and really make those cognitive thoughts become stronger in a more positive way, instead of using those negative and maladaptive type of ways. But we really want to make sure that we're doing the processing of that. But we also need to get people out and connecting with each other, and just outside and out in a space where they feel grounded. Being grounded. Then that's another one of these tools that we use, where we say, look around you, what's coming in that's new, what's different, what's exciting your curiosity, where are you wanting to find hope for your future and for the way that you're going to live. And I do think that then creates a sense of well-being and being well, that you have both behaviorally and some of this more content processing piece.
Yeah.
So see, we thought we would have this conversation about, journaling and working out and doing that. And it's like, it goes so much deeper, which I love. And I love all the things that you're sharing and opening up these things. But I'm curious because I think it's useful for people to hear how you personally address some of this. I mean, if you're in a state right now of feeling a certain way and you want to feel better or feel well, what did you say?
Or different.
Or different, exactly. You want to feel different. What are some of the it's okay, it's like a two-part thing. What are some of the tools you can use, which some of you have even addressed some of those too, but what are ways maybe that you could use those tools and at the same time try to dig a little bit deeper in doing some of this work that's maybe behind it?
I'll speak to that. I mean, there's a lot to this, right? This is just one little piece, but one of the practices that has really helped me personally transform, transmute situations and experiences that I'm having, whether it be in my physical body, my emotional body, something's happening to me that I don't like. I don't know, I'm having a bad day, I'm having a problem that I'm facing, I made a mistake and I feel bad about it, is just this idea of taking some time to do self-assessment through I use a series of questions and a practice. I call it a growth and gratitude practice with my clients that helps them find gratitude, growth, and grace in literally anything and everything that's happening in your life. And so from a mental perspective, it helps you transmute the energy that's not working. And it's really comprised of 6 different things. You ask yourself what's working well, number 1. Number 2, what's not working well, so you can be witness and acknowledge both the good and the bad from a witnessing standpoint. So you're standing back and instead of being a full-on victim to it, you're sort of, here's what's well, here's what's not well, and just laying it all out on the table. And then from there, I really like to have people go in and ask themselves, how am I actually feeling about this? Like, what are the emotions that I'm feeling? So this brings their awareness into their body and helps them start connecting to the emotional piece. Now, some people, as Jasmyne was saying, will numb out and they don't have access to their emotions. They've so successfully numbed out, they don't even know what an emotion is because it's too scary, it's too hard. So this gets people who are going through that process to start to think about, okay, well, how does this make me feel? What's working well and what's not working well? Like I might have a combination of feelings and emotions, and actually taking a few moments to stop, as Ed was saying, put your hand on your heart and just feel what you're feeling for a moment. Like if you've got sadness there, what would it be like if you just stopped and gave yourself permission, and that sad part of you that I like to look at as like a younger version of yourself or a childlike version of yourself that's just needing some comfort. What would it be like to just sit with that sadness for just a moment and let the energy, because that's what emotion is, energy and motion, let it move through you for a moment before we go into problem solving mode and gratitude finding. Let's just first process it. Let's feel that. And then once you've felt all the feelings around the good and the bad of what's working and not working, then you can go in and start to ask, okay, well, how is everything that's happening a gift? How is it a lesson? How can I get good, not just from the, and gratitude, not just from the good, but how can I get gratitude from the stuff that's not working well? Like, maybe it didn't work out and I didn't get as much done today, but is there some gratitude I can gain about that? Like a wisdom or clarity or lesson, or maybe I know what not to do next time. There's always something you can gain that's of value from that experience, which helps you to take all of the self-blame and guilt, shame kind of thing out of the equation. And then you can move into asking, do I need help and support with this? If so, who can I ask for help and support so I don't have to do this on my own? And number two, what action can I take, right? So it moves you through this witnessing process, a feeling process, and then an action taking process where you're reaching out, asking for support and taking the action that you need. And, that's just one of many tools that I use. But that one for me, I think it's really helped me be more of a witness to my experience instead of being so activated. It can help me self-regulate, course correct, and adjust on the fly. And when you do this regularly, you can kind of get to the point where in the moment you can just be like, all right, this didn't work very well. What's the gift? What's the lesson? What do I need to do to fix this? And how can I feel it real quickly? You can get used to it and move through that process fairly quickly. So that's just one of the tools that I would say I think has made probably the biggest difference in my personal life. And I've had every client that I've worked with has had a lot of great results just getting into that practice. And that kind of helps get to the root of what's really going on and helps us be more present and more of a witness to what we're experiencing, as I said before. So that's one of my thoughts.
Thank you.
I don't know if this is germane or not, just tell me if it isn't, but I remember reading some sort of statistic when I was in school that said the predictability of a client getting better, however you want to describe getting better, is based on the rapport with the person that's working with them and how they feel about that. And so if there's a relationship that can be established, that the client feels safe in that relationship, they're more likely, self-reporting, to feel better. So when they come into me and they say, fix me, I just say, you're not broken. You're whole, you're complete. There's nothing that needs fixing. What do you want to work on? And that kind of helps them realize that they're not some damned soul or somebody that, not salvageable or something like that. It helps them get an understanding of, oh, yeah, I'm worthy of this. I'm worthy of the care and the treatment that I'm getting, but I'm also worthy of loving myself because I'm not broken. And I am just who I am in this moment. So That's one of the things I try to convey.
Well, what I'm
It's-
hearing from the two of them are the two pillars of when you're really talking through what people need to work through. It's that people need to gain confidence in order to try new things and feel like there's this ability to say, you know, no matter what comes my way, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to work through it. There's something here that I can gain from it. So people get out of the sense of overwhelm and they try new things. That creates more confidence, right? So there's that give and take. And I hear that with Jess's explanation. And then aside from confidence, you know, we've got to have this ability to really look at ourselves and feel that we have the strength to kind of go on and move through and make sure that, you know, we can say all day to somebody to journal, right? We can say all day for somebody, you like photography, take more pictures, or, you know, what are some of your hobbies and how can you increase the way that you do those, or spend more time with your kids, or, you know, there's all these little activities that we can kind of name for people. But I think that maybe what's happening in this discussion is that in addition to gaining that confidence and finding motivation, right? In addition to that, what we're saying is that, you know, it's not what you do on paper. It's really that underlying sense of that why you're doing it and where that's going to help your mind and body keep moving in a positive way. And so I do think, Lori, you know, her question to me was what she was getting at initially was that, you know, maybe there's some tools that we can say to people that, you know, do this, you know, write a list of gratitude and find a passion, get a hobby, spend more time with your kids, take 5 minutes to think about where you're at and go from there. But what we know as therapists, kind of what Ed's hinting on with the rapport building, is that if we can't find a way to motivate people that, and they don't have the confidence to kind of move in those directions, doing those activities is going to feel cumbersome, it's going to be drudgery, and it's not going to create a positive outlook. So we need to start, my opinion and my bias is we need to start young, right? We need to do the prevention components. We need to work, and a lot of places do this now. There are a lot of resources that talk about how to raise emotionally intelligent kids, how to work with your children in order to help them have that feelings base. Like I was naming the social media piece of those older teens, and creating the balance of sometimes you feel icky, sometimes you're having a bad day, sometimes you may be uncomfortable, but we still need to go outside and take a walk, or you still need to go to soccer practice, or you still need to come down for dinner. We've got to work through that.
And just to bring everything back to the mind-body connection, I will say that when I work with people, many times when the wheels have come off the bus, when it really feels like life has devolved into chaos, my advice is always, let's look at the basics, right? What does your person need to survive? Let's get your basics handled first. So are you getting enough sleep? Are you drinking enough water? Are you eating food that fuels you? Are you moving your body in ways that feel good? Can we just meet your basic human life needs first, and then maybe free up some space for your brain and your heart and your emotions to do their important work? But build that foundation of you know, give your body just the basic tools it needs to survive first. And boy, all the rest of the stuff comes a lot easier when you're getting a good night's sleep.
Oh, yeah. I 100% agree with what you just said. Like for the women that I work with who are overwhelmed and they're like, I don't have time to do anything. I'm like, okay, then just focus on the basics and
Sleep more.
Make sure you're getting regular and consistent rest. Make sure you're drinking water. You're eating healthy food that fuels you versus food that drains you. You know, yeah, absolutely. I love this part of the conversation. Exercise, you can, you know, expel some of that stress and that energy, like you can transmute it. And so, yeah, basics, that's a great place to start for anybody, I think, in the beginning, if you're wanting to just kind of get your sanity back. And then from there, your health and, you know, your soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd like to,
No, go ahead.
is that okay? I'd like to jump in and just kind of tie a couple things together. So all of you have talked, all the panelists have talked about various coping mechanisms for dealing with what I would call situational or momentary stuff, you know. And then I don't mean to oversimplify, so I apologize if it sounds that way. However, one thing I would like to ask though is, in addition to coping mechanisms or strategies, how can we build and you all have touched on this in some way, how can we build resilience? What are habits that we can incorporate either on a daily basis or periodic basis to build the kind of resilience that we need, so that when we encounter these momentary or situational issues, they hit us more like, it's more like the surf hitting us, rather than, you know, the gentle surf as opposed to the wave hitting us, because we have better coping, or we have more resilience, I guess, for dealing with that. So I'll be quiet and let you speak.
I'll
I
speak
think
to this
I'll,
first.
oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
Ed.
All right. I think that a lot of times people interpret the wave as the entire ocean drowning them. And so that perspective that they come in with is not necessarily what they think resilience is. They think if they can drop on the floor and do a 2-minute plank, and you know, they can run around beautiful Colorado and hike in the mountains and everything else, that's resilience. But when they come back to their home or their workplace or you know, whatever else situation they're in, they're right back there again, beating themselves up because they're not necessarily resilient in that moment. And so being able to be resilient, I think, is a little bit, that's a goal that we want to achieve, but how do we achieve that? We achieve that with self-knowledge. And we achieve that, as far as a technique goes, is through polyvagal theory. You know, the window of tolerance. Dan Siegel talks about the window of tolerance. You know, Stephen Porges has a protocol, a safe and sound protocol for being able to increase that window of tolerance. So if people are in this fight or flight mode, or if they're in this ventral vagal where, hey, everything's pretty cool right now, I'm feeling good, I feel blessed. Or if they're hiding, they're going back to bed and pulling the covers up over their head, they're in dorsal vagal. And so being able to address it from that schematic, I think is very, very helpful for people to understand that neurophysiologically, that's how we get to those kinds of moments where we can increase the window of tolerance. And certainly it's mediated through the heart, and certainly it's taken with the vagus nerve right up to the neural synapses. And so if we're talking about reprogramming the brain, we're going to use neurophysiological approaches to do that. That also is the approach that is used in so many cases of trauma, because trauma is deep down. And when we're talking about doing deep work and being able to uncover things and then explore things, you have to have that sense of safety before you can get there. And by approaching that with something like ventral vagal is going to, I think, create a greater opportunity for the client to feel more resilient in the moment too. And certainly there's affect regulation as well that goes with that. And by affect regulation is, how do you respond in the moment? So.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just going to say too, like, you know, to foster more resiliency, I think like the practice that I shared a little bit ago with the, you know, going through and doing some self-reflection and sort of self-navigating your way through things is a really great way to become more resilient. That's a tool that can be used to help you work through a challenging moment. But again, it's not necessarily healing at a cellular level, whatever trauma imprint is causing you to react and respond that way. So if your nervous system is activated and you're in fight or flight mode or freeze or fawn mode, there needs to be, like, it can be hard to sit down and like self-assess in that moment, right? Because we're right in the thick of it. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we need to do in order to become more resilient. I think just embracing our healing path and our healing journey, instead of shying away from it and being ashamed of it, like just commit yourself to your growth and your healing and find somebody who can help you heal your trauma. Because at the end of the day, we all have, I'm a firm believer that we all have traumas, whether it's a micro trauma or a major trauma that's happening. There's programming and imprinting that has traumatized us throughout our life. That's what puts into place the nervous system response and causes us to react and respond to things the way we are responding. So if we can help people better understand why they're in fight or flight or freeze or fawn, and why they're choosing one of those 4 ways of coping and dealing with it, just the awareness, as Ed said, the self-awareness, I think is going to be huge. Like, you can't change what you don't know. It brings the unconscious into the conscious. And the moment you bring the conscious into reality, you can actually start to do something about it. You can't do anything about it if you don't know, right? So going back and doing healing work, whatever modality or treatment therapy you want to do, that's one of the reasons why when I work with my clients, I have a form of cellular memory release work that I do, like it's a therapy work that I do, where we can go back in time and we can address whatever trauma imprint put your, nervous system response in place. And that can be one way to heal that and become more resilient. So you're not responding the same way anymore. It's like a reset for the response. And then using the self-assessment practice, a lot of people have this idea, like, I've got to get it perfect and right out of the gate. And we know that things aren't perfect, right? If something's not working the way we want, we need to learn how to navigate our way through that. So that practice I shared earlier is one of the things that I take people through. And then the other piece that I think is really important, especially for women in particular, is working women in particular are so focused on time management. They're wanting to be as productive as possible and get as much done in a day. And in reality, it's not about time management. It's about energy management. And that goes back to really listening to your body. Do you have the energy to do the 500 things on your list of things to do today? If you don't have the energy to do that and you push yourself through that, you're going to be miserable, number one, and you're probably going to send yourself into burnout. So learning how to have efficient energy management practices with the way that you spend your free time, making sure you're consistently refueling your energy, consistently plugging energy drains. And energy drains can be anything from self-sabotage to the people in your life, to situations and experiences that you're dealing, to your own personality patterns and behaviors where you're overgiving. Those are energy drains, right? So really getting clear on what your energy drains are and actively seeking to plug those drains and mitigate those drains will free up time so that you can more regularly and consistently fuel yourself. And what I have found is, for women in particular, this is true for men too, but women in particular, we can be more focused and more effective in the way that we show up and work in the world if we are in a place of being grounded more often. So the more consistently we're fueling our energy stores and plugging our energy drains, the more likely we'll be grounded, calmer, cooler, collected, which leads to resilience, right? Because when stuff hits the fan, if you're running on empty, your ability to be resilient in that moment and work through that issue is going to be next to nil, right? So really just making sure that taking care of yourself and your energy is very, very important. That's a big part of the work that I do with my clients. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, both of you have talked a lot about what people can do individually, and I just wanted to point out one piece of resiliency that's been named over and over again, specifically when dealing with ACEs or adverse childhood experiences, and really talking through that trauma piece that you both kind of hit on. The way that we input trauma is not just based on what happened to us, but how we've been reacting to what happened to us. And one of the key pieces to resiliency they find over and over again is having a safe support. So having one person that we feel is a safe support. You don't need a team. You don't need, a whole lot of people. You need to have one person that you feel you can consistently go to, and that they'll listen to you, and you can confide in them and feel like you can have that moment to really feel connected to them, because that is a huge part of this. Resiliency comes when you feel like you've been heard, and then you can go through it, however that looks for you, but that safe support, I think, is a really important piece in the connectivity.
I agree. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think you're speaking about adverse childhood events that are actually predictable, and you can almost see a trajectory based on the kinds. Yeah, and so there are interventions along the way. But I think your point is very well taken. Just one person who's your advocate, just one. Yeah.
And I think that goes bigger than when we're talking about being well or well-being. It's not just how you feel in your body or how you feel in your mind, but your whole life. I mean, I think that one person is applicable in every area of your life, for sure.
Certainly how you relate to others is also part of, I think, your well-being, right? I mean, we don't live in a vacuum. We are getting to the top of the hour, and I would like to cover a little bit more ground, though, before we wrap things up. Like, for example, and this is kind of, and this question is directed at Leanne. Leanne, how do busy people get in a workout?
Well, they go into business where they work out with their clients.
I've noticed that actually. I'm thinking, we work in different parts of the house, and I'm back here and she's on his, back-to-back Zoom calls with clients. And I'm thinking to myself, God, I wish I could get that much exercise in a day.
Yeah,
But
I will tell you what I tell my busy clients or my clients who don't like to exercise.
right.
Find exercise that gives you the most bang for your buck, right? So you do not have to commit an hour. You do not have to commit a half an hour. You don't even have to commit 15 minutes. You can literally take the stairs more often. You can do 10 squats, sit down, stand up at your chair 10 times in a row instead of one time. You can do, I've seen you do push-ups at the sink, right? You're passing by the sink, stop and do 10 push-ups from the counter, not the floor. There are lots of little ways you can get more activity in your life, and every little bit gives you cumulative benefits. And to the point of the rest of our conversation, I like to call exercise poor man's therapy. Obviously, I'm oversimplifying, and it's not gonna heal your trauma. But as a person who came to fitness as an angsty teenager who discovered that running made things better and that lifting weights and getting physically stronger made me feel more efficacious, like I could do things that I didn't think I could do before. I find that a lot of people, particularly in my case, middle-aged women who've never had that experience, can get that feeling of, oh, I can be strong and I can do stuff, and I can still adapt. I can still respond to my world and my environment, and I'm not dead yet. And that's a good thing.
That's awesome. And Jasmine, when she was mentioning talking to a young person and saying, however you're feeling, go outside and play, or go outside and go for a walk, or do something like that. And I think it's true. It's the making you feel stronger. And you've all mentioned this thing about needing to feel like when life is either the waves or the tidal wave or whatever it is, having that goal of feeling like, I know I can handle this. And yeah, so even if it's 5 minutes of doing something that you couldn't do before, I think that really helps.
I will also note that gardening is a really great activity for grounding, because you're literally dealing with the earth. You are growing things, you are witnessing the cycle of life, you are nurturing things, and you think you have control right up until you have no control. And it will teach you how to be really comfortable with having no control, which is all part of being more resilient, right? We all have this illusion that we're in control of our lives, and none of us has control over our lives. We try, but at the end of the day, we're at the mercy of a lot of other factors.
Right.
Indeed.
But we still plant seeds.
Yes, we do. Thank you for that.
A couple of you
So,
have touched
so
on-
the Buddhist, you know, before he was enlightened, you know, what do you do? You know, and he says, well, I chop wood and carry water. Well, now that you're enlightened, what do? I chop wood and carry water. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. A couple of you have touched on the subject of sleep or the quality of sleep. What are some tips for improving your sleep, better quality of sleep? And I don't mean silence the trains that run in my neighborhood, which that's a whole other subject, but please.
Routine. I mean, that's one of the first keys to sleep, is having a consistent routine around it. When you go to bed, you know, being mindful to how you're going to bed. The electronics, we all know, having them in your room and having them in a space, especially for entrepreneurs, people that can easily check their email and look at different stats or talk to people, you know, through texts or whatever. Being able to limit that is a big part of it. But the routine piece is so important. And, you know, the exercise piece goes hand in hand with sleep. If you feel that you've done enough over the course of your day, your body is tired. Watching what you eat, we've talked about that several times, you know, like being mindful of what you're putting in your body past 1 or 2 p.m. If you're drinking a venti coffee at 4 o'clock, some people don't respond well to that and forget about it, you know, and all of a sudden it's midnight and they're like, why am I still wide awake? So there's a lot of pieces that are simple, and especially with the routine, but you have to have the desire to change them, because we do sabotage sleep a lot as well.
I was just listening to a podcast last night, and I'd like to give you the reference, but I can't remember. It was on the art of manliness, but this author was talking about just taking 5 minutes at night and writing down the things that you remember. No more than 5 minutes. Stop at 5 minutes. But writing down the things that you remember will help you process it while you're doing this, and your central nervous system and all this stuff is clicking in. But that's it. So you don't have to then, when you turn out the light, try to remember and try to solve this and or anything else like that. It's on paper now. It's permanent. You can go back to it, so you can let it go. And I just thought it was a really elegant way of doing that. And I did it last night, and I thought it helped. You know, who knows if it'll work the second time, but I think the first time it certainly did work. And it's just a really easy thing, a notepad by the bed with a real pen, and, you know, a dim light, just writing down the 5 things that you remember from that day, no more than 5 minutes.
Yeah,
I like that.
I'll chime in on this too. I wanted to just say, like, I agree with Jasmine saying that consistency is so important. And one of the things that I do with my clients is I teach them how to do muscle testing, so they can actually muscle test using kinesiology to figure out how many hours of sleep their body actually needs in a night. And that could change. Like, if you're in a state of burnout, you're probably going to need more rest for a little while until you recoup that energy over a period of time. But teaching clients how to muscle test for themselves and figure out how many hours of sleep. I know for myself personally, if I'm less than 7.5 hours, I wake up sore. I can't concentrate as much. But if I get that 7.5 hours, I'm good. The other thing that I've used both myself and with clients is there's like supplementation you can take before bed. Like Calm, for example, has magnesium and some things in it that you can take to calm and soothe your nervous system so that you won't be having the monkey mind stuff going on. You can use eye pillows to keep it dark in your room. You can use noise machines that sound like the ocean or birds chirping or whatever you need to calm and soothe your nervous system to help you get into that rhythm and routine is a really great way. And then, like Jasmine was saying, making sure you're paying attention to your physical health and the food you eat and all of those things as well can make a huge difference. I know most people who are not exercising, because they're not expending stress, that stress has nowhere to go, so it tends to keep us awake at night. So I really do agree with her about the exercise piece, that it's very important to have that in place. Same thing, Leanne knows that too, but
Yeah, I have to say that just reminded me. I think I'm guilty of this all the time. I'm holding tension in my neck and shoulders before bed, or something's a little achy or a little sore, and I think, oh, it's okay, I'm going to go to sleep, I'll relax in my sleep. And I wake up and it's not gone, because of course your body doesn't relax that way in your sleep. But if I take the 30 seconds to do the stretches that I know are going to make that tension sort of relieve from the muscles, then the sleep is much better. The quality is better, and I wake up feeling refreshed. I've also found it really helps to set a go to bed timer. It's really easy to let bedtime just drift and drift and drift. And if you know what time you've got to wake up in the morning, then you know what time you need to be in bed. And so back up your routine from that. Make sure you're doing all of your stuff on time, and then you have time for the routine.
Good.
And kick your cats out of the bedroom.
Good tips, everyone. Wow. I feel like we've come full circle to a certain degree. You know, we dove right in and we got into being well and how it can be a big thing, a big deal, and still important. And I like how we went kind of in the opposite direction of what I thought that we would do, which is starting with some of the, you know, get good sleep or whatever, and then maybe moving into things that are deeper. And we went the opposite, and we started, I think, with all this heavy stuff and life and self-soothing and all these things, and then we ended up with some of these things that are basic and simple and foundational, which I think is a super good lesson. And you four know that, obviously, and I really appreciate your insights. I don't know if anyone has any final words, or Patrick, if you have any final questions.
No, I would ask if our panelists have any final thoughts they'd like to share with our audience.
I would just say, if you're an entrepreneur, a solopreneur especially, doing everything you can to systemize, automate the things that you're doing on a regular basis that drain your energy, and hiring people, delegating, which goes back to asking for the help and support that you need. Like, recognize that you do not need to be the one that does everything on your own. And if you are operating from that place, that is a great place to start plugging a drain and really taking back control of your business, because you can't build your business and grow your business if you're the only one working on it. So get some help. That would be my last thought. Yeah.
Perfect. Anyone else?
Well, my final thought is just around your initial question, Lori, about sacrifice. You know, being an entrepreneur, there is some sacrifice involved in that. And I think all of us would be able to tell a story of where we've had to do that, how we've had a late night, a big deadline, something that someone else just really couldn't do. We had to do it. And what I think that happens is sometimes we have one of those projects and we just let it get away from us, and we go too long doing those things. And I think at some point, once we recognize we've been the one that's continued to make those sacrifices, that something is going to need to drop, and don't let it be your physical and mental health.
Totally.
Yeah, that would be another really important piece of advice I would give people, is learn to say no.
Yep.
You know, it's really hard. You want to be in on everything. You don't want to pass up on any opportunities, but it's the only way you can prioritize yourself, and you deserve to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that looks like for you, you deserve to feel good.
Those are great. If anyone else has something to add, I think that's great. But those final words, I think, are a great place to stop, with you deserve to feel good. So I really like that sentiment. And I'm really grateful, as I'm sure Patrick is, to all of you for sharing your thoughts and your knowledge and your opinions. And I think that it will be very enlightening for people to listen to. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And we'll be back next time with another relevant conversation. And be sure to like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.